when we go to offset, the first thing it's going to ask us for is an offset distance. We can also tell it to erase the source object. We can also tell it to put the layer of the source object or put it on the current layer. Right now we're set to source, okay? So it's going to be on the same layer. So I want you to set your offset distance to 0.25. And we'll start with the circle. When you offset a circle, you can either offset to the inside or to the outside. I'm going to go to the outside. So I can offset this 1/4 inch. Same thing with an arc. You can offset in. You'll get to a point where it cannot be offset again. Whoa, I didn't think I was going to get that small. And then I can't go any further. Cannot offset that object. Line, you can go to either side. So I could pick a line and offset in either direction. Polylines, when you offset those, on our lines, and I demonstrated this earlier, when you offset those, they don't clean up the corners. So you're basically going to take an object, either create concentric circles and arcs, or you're going to basically create parallel lines around those. Think about how many times we ran the offset command. One time. So if you want to undo part of this, you can't. So if I go up there and click on undo, it undoes everything because we never got out of the command. So now let's look at some other options of offset. If I go to offset, I want to enter a distance of 0.25. I want to pick this line. We have a neat feature now called multiple. If I click on multiple, move my mouse over here to the right side of the line and just start left clicking, every time I click, it's going to offset the last object 1/4 inch. If I move my mouse over to the left side and start clicking, then it's going to offset that to the left. So if I wanted to switch to another object, there's a default of next object. So if I hit enter, I can go to the next object and do the same thing. Just start clicking. So if you've got to do multiple offsets at the same distance, use the multiple option. That will save you a lot of time. So let's go ahead and undo this. Single undo will take care of that. And then the next feature I'm going to show you. This one relies on dynamic input. So we're just going to use a standard 1/4 inch offset. Now let's say you're working on a project where you have to offset 2 1/4 inch lines, then you need a 1 inch space. 2 1/4 inch lines, 1 inch space. As you're offsetting, let me go to multiple. No, I'm just going to leave it the same. So I'm going to do 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. Now here, because of the edit window with dynamic input, I could type in 1, it offsets at 1. I can do a 1/4, 1/4, type in 1, do 1/4, 1/4, and then 1. So you can change the offset distance on the fly. Before this feature, we had to restart the command every time. And I use this a lot for architectural. So for example, I'm going to say I want to offset this 0.125. And I'm going to basically offset it 1/8 of an inch, offset it 1/4 of an inch, offset that one 3 inches, which is way off the page. So you can go in and actually change your intervals without even having to restart. Pretty neat. Go to the tab Offset 2. Sometimes we'll use offset to help us locate points, not just edges. So let's say, for example, I wanted to find the 4 circles. I could offset each line in 1/4 of an inch and draw the circle, and then erase the construction lines. So we could go in and type in offset 0.5, pick a line. I'm going to go to multiple. No, I don't want multiple. And offset each one. I'm getting this in the fillet command confused with the multiple option. So now that you have the intersecting lines, you can basically draw a circle at those intersections. Could I have used the copy command to accomplish the same thing? You can. I mean, typically if it's a line, you could offset it or you could copy. I find that offset is basically a little quicker because I don't have to type in a distance each time. So there's several ways that we use offset. All right. Page 1124. AutoCAD has 3 different array commands. We have rectangular array, polar array, and path array. Rectangular and polar has been in AutoCAD forever. Path array is a fairly new command. When I say new, 5, 6, 7 years old, you know, in the relative terms of things. Go down to a tab called Rectangular Array. Now when we create an array, the end result is an arrayed object that can be modified. In older versions of AutoCAD, when we arrayed an object, let's say I wanted 3 rows and 3 columns, I ended up with 9 individual objects. Now I have one group of objects called an arrayed object. So in this example, we're going to set up a 3x2 array with 1/2 inch spacing in between. So up here on your ribbon, on your array button, you'll see you've got rectangular, path, and polar. Let's start with rectangular and go down and click on the red box and then enter. Now what happens is you'll get a preview of just a random, like 3x4 array. Okay. There's several ways to adjust the array. You could use the blue arrows or the blue grips, or you could set this up on the ribbon. So up here on your ribbon, you'll see, well, let me get this zoomed in so I can edit. So here I can say I want 3 columns, 4 rows, and you'll notice you get a preview. Columns are vertical, rows are horizontal. Some days at 5 o'clock I don't know the difference. And then I want to set spacing. I want 1 inch in between. Whenever you're doing an array, you have to take the width of the object plus the gap. So the column spacing would be 3 inches. However, the row spacing would be 2 inches. So we can go up and change that. So column, I want 3 inches. Rows, I want 2 inches. So you end up with something like that. Now with the grips, I can click on the grip and increase the number of rows, or decrease the number of rows. Zoom in here. So you have a lot more graphical control over these. Let's say your goal is to fill this space here, then you could use this arrow, make these a little smaller. I want to increase, I want another one in there. And then I could change the spacing. Here I could add another row, and then come down here and decrease the spacing. And then hit escape. Now this is an arrayed object, so if I click on it, it's not an arrayed object. I did it all wrong. No, actually I did it right, I just had something set incorrectly. Up on your up on your ribbon, there's a button called Associative. Make sure that's turned on. I'm pretty sure yours is turned on, because I was probably demonstrating this last semester and forgot to turn it back on. So I'm going to add another row. I'm going to reduce. Hit escape. Now, if you hover over it, it's an associative object. So here I can go in and modify. What I tell my students is do not explode this into individual objects unless it is absolutely necessary. Because you may need to go in and adjust the spacing. Let's say you're doing a shop layout and you've got columns every 10 feet. Well, then you realize we messed up, it should have been every 15 feet. Well, if it's an arrayed object, you can go in and easily fix that. So let's take a look at the next type of an array, which is a polar array. Polar array allows you to take an object and array it about a center point. You can rotate the objects or not. So with polar array, you have to pick the object. I'm going to pick the number 7 over here. This is going to look more like a saw blade than a ear when we're done with it. So pick that. It prompts for a center point, so make sure we get the center point. And then by default, you'll get about 6 items. I need 36 of these. So if I go up here to the item count and change that to 36, then you'll get something that looks like that. Now keep in mind, I had to draw that single tooth within a 10-degree angle. So this would come out exactly at 36. You can tell it to array between 180 degrees, 360 degrees. You determine the total angle. Now with the polar and with the other ones, one of the things I want to mention, it has item numbers, row, and then levels. Levels refer to 3D. So if I was in model space, I could actually stack these up in 3D. So if you're working on a 3D drawing, you could do that as well. Now items can be rotated or not rotated. Those teeth definitely needs to be rotated. And it is also a group. So later I can click on it and modify it. All right. Questions about polar array? Number of items, give it a center point, and go for it. Let's take a look at path array. This is probably one of my favorite commands that they've added. Let's say that you're a landscaper and you wanted to basically create this walkway with the stepping stones around it. So we're going to take this stepping stone and we're going to have it follow the curve. Now if you don't want the curve to show on your drawing, you could put it on a non-plottable layer. And do them. So if we go up to path array. It's going to ask you to select the object. I'm going to pick the stepping stone. I'm going to hit enter, and then it says select curve. So I pick this curve. And you'll notice I get something that looks like that. It's like, what on earth is going on? We got to make a couple of changes. First thing I want to do is change the base point of the object. So if I click on base point, I should be able to pick in the middle here and get that to line up. And you get something that looks like that. So try that and let me know if it works or if it doesn't work. If I do path, pick the object, pick the path. It didn't pick that. Now if I change my base point to another corner, for example, that corner will be touching the object. Base point, I'm picking the center. This time I'm going to be exact. I'm going to use midpoint between 2 points. I think I just picked the wrong object. Base point. I get worse at this every time I do it. All right, select object, select path, base point. Oh, that is strange. And it gets worse each time.
I ended up using the midpoint snap network.
Okay. Lock up, there we go. You know, I've only done this exercise 150 times. All right, select path. And then base point. There we go, I just picked somewhere on that spline. There we go. Now this is the cool thing about this. If you click on that spline and change it, it will automatically add stepping stones to the path. And you can do this with any of the arrays, not just path,